Have you ever wondered how a single act of kindness could completely transform someone's life? Today, I'm sharing the remarkable journey of Sarah, a waitress whose compassion led her from financial struggle to unexpected opportunity. Stay with me until the end to discover how small gestures of humanity can create ripples that change lives forever. The rain pounded against the windows of Rosie's diner, creating a soothing rhythm that almost drowned out the clinking of silverware and quiet conversations. Sarah Matthews wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that day, her eyes occasionally drifting to the clock. Just 2 more hours until the end of her double shift. 2 more hours until she could go home to her tiny apartment, put her feet up, and worry about how she'd make rent this month. At 28, Sarah had been working at the diner for nearly 5 years. Not exactly where she had imagined herself after dropping out of community college to care for her ailing mother, but the flexibility of the shifts and the decent tips kept her afloat. Barely. Her manager, Frank, was understanding when she needed to adjust her schedule, and her regular customers brightened her otherwise monotonous days with friendly conversation and the occasional generous tip. The bell above the door jingled, pulling Sarah from her thoughts. She turned to greet the new customer with her practiced smile, only to find a teenage boy standing awkwardly in the entrance, water dripping from his worn jacket and forming a small puddle at his feet. He couldn't have been older than 16, with dark circles under his eyes that spoke of exhaustion beyond his years. "Table for one?" Sarah asked, grabbing a menu. The boy hesitated, his gaze darting around the half-empty diner. "Actually, I was wondering if you needed any help. I could wash dishes or take out trash. Anything, really." Sarah recognized the look in his eyes, a mixture of pride and desperation, the same look she had worn during her own difficult times. "I'm sorry, we're not hiring right now," she said gently. "But why don't you take a seat? You look like you could use some warming up." The boy shook his head. "I don't have money for food. I just thought maybe I could work for a meal." Sarah glanced toward the kitchen, where Frank was busy preparing orders. She made a split-second decision. "Just sit down for a minute. Let me see what I can do." She guided him to a corner booth away from the windows and most of the other customers. "I'm Sarah," she introduced herself. "Tyler," the boy responded, his shoulders still tense as if ready to bolt. "Nice to meet you, Tyler. Give me 1 second, okay?" Sarah hurried to the kitchen, checking that Frank was occupied before grabbing a bowl and filling it with the day's soup special, a hearty vegetable beef that had been simmering since morning. She added a generous portion of cornbread on the side and quietly slipped back out to Tyler's table. "Here," she said, placing the food in front of him. "It's on the house." Tyler looked up at her with suspicion. "Why would you do that? You don't know me." Sarah shrugged. "Because someone did the same for me once. Sometimes we all need a little help." The suspicion in Tyler's eyes gave way to gratitude as the aroma of the soup reached him. His stomach growled audibly, and Sarah pretended not to notice as she set down some silverware and a glass of water. "Eat up while it's hot. I'll be back to check on you in a bit." As Sarah attended to her other tables, she kept an eye on Tyler. He ate slowly at first, as if savoring each spoonful, then with increasing speed as his hunger took over. By the time she returned, the bowl was empty, and color had returned to his pale face. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice steadier now. "I haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Would you like some more?" Sarah offered, already reaching for a bowl. Tyler shook his head. "I can't let you get in trouble." "No trouble," Sarah assured him, though she knew Frank would have words if he caught her giving away free food. "But maybe you can tell me why you're out here alone in this weather, looking for work instead of being in school." Tyler stared down at the table, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on its surface. "It's complicated." "It usually is," Sarah acknowledged, "but sometimes talking helps." Something in her tone must have reassured him because slowly, hesitantly, Tyler began to speak. He explained how his mother had died of cancer 2 years ago, leaving him in the care of an uncle who had little interest in raising a teenager. 3 days ago, after a particularly heated argument, his uncle had told him to get out and not come back. "I've been sleeping at the bus station," Tyler admitted. "I thought I could find a job, Maybe save enough for a room somewhere. But no one wants to hire a kid without an address or ID. Sarah listened without interrupting, her heart aching for this boy who had been dealt such a difficult hand in life. She recognized in him the same resilience she had needed to develop after her own mother's death. A determination to survive despite the odds. "What about school?" she asked gently. "I was in my junior year," Tyler replied. "I had good grades, too. But now—" He trailed off, his expression darkening. "I just need to focus on surviving right now." Sarah nodded, understanding all too well the hierarchy of needs. Dreams and aspirations meant little when basic necessities were uncertain. The diner door jingled again, and Sarah turned to see an older man enter, impeccably dressed in what she recognized as an expensive suit, though she knew little about fashion. He carried himself with confidence, surveying the diner before choosing a booth not far from Tyler's. "I'll be right back," Sarah told Tyler, moving to attend to the new customer. As she approached, she noticed a man watching Tyler with curiosity. "Good evening, sir," Sarah greeted him. "Welcome to Rosie's. What can I get for you tonight?" The man, who introduced himself as Edward Thornton, ordered coffee and apple pie, his manner polite but distant. As Sarah went to fetch his order, she noticed him continuing to observe Tyler, who was now staring out the rain, lost in thought. When Sarah returned with Edward's coffee and pie, he surprised her with a question. "The young man over there," he said quietly, gesturing toward Tyler. "Is he your brother?" "No," Sarah replied, puzzled. "Just someone who needed a meal." Edward's eyebrows rose slightly. "And you provided one, even though he couldn't pay?" Sarah felt a flicker of defensiveness. "It's just soup and bread. It would have been thrown out anyway." A strange expression crossed Edward's face, something like approval mixed with curiosity. "That's remarkably kind in today's world," he commented. "May I ask why?" The question caught Sarah off guard. Why indeed? She wasn't in the habit of feeding every hungry person who walked through the door. She couldn't afford to be that generous. But something about Tyler had struck a chord. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said simply, "and because I've been hungry before. It's not a feeling I'd wish on anyone." Edward nodded thoughtfully, taking a sip of his coffee. "Compassion is a rare quality, miss?" "Matthews. Sarah Matthews. Well, Ms. Matthews, your kindness has not gone unnoticed." Before Sarah could respond, Frank called her name from behind the counter, his tone suggesting she'd been neglecting her other duties. With an apologetic smile to Edward, she hurried back to work, the conversation already fading from her mind as she focused on completing her shift. By closing time, Tyler had fallen asleep in the booth, his head resting against the window. Sarah gently woke him, offering him a takeout container with another serving of soup and the last of the day's bread. "You can't stay here overnight," she explained apologetically, "but there's a shelter on 5th Street that might have a bed." Tyler accepted the food with gratitude. "Thank you, Sarah, for everything." As he turned to leave, Sarah impulsively scribbled her phone number on a napkin. "If you need anything, just someone to talk to, you can call me. The diner has a phone I can use." Tyler took the napkin, carefully folding it into his pocket. "Why are you helping me?" Sarah smiled, remembering Edward's similar question. "Because someone should," she said simply, "and today that someone is me." Little did Sarah know that this small act of kindness would set in motion events that would change both their lives forever. Sarah woke the next morning with muscles aching from her double shift. The spring in her mattress had long given up its fight, creating a hollow that matched the curve of her body after years of use. Light filtered through the thin curtains of her studio apartment as she mechanically prepared for another day. Coffee first, then a quick shower in the bathroom where the tiles were cracked and the water pressure unreliable. As she dressed in her waitress uniform, her thoughts drifted to Tyler. Had he found shelter for the night? The rain had continued well into the early hours, and the image of him walking through those streets alone haunted her. She tucked his crumpled napkin with her phone number into her pocket, hoping he wouldn't need to use it, but relieved she had offered what little support she could. The morning rush at Rosie's diner brought the usual parade of commuters grabbing coffee and breakfast sandwiches before heading to offices downtown. Sarah moved efficiently between tables, her smile practiced but genuine, her mind occasionally wandering to the teen with the haunted eyes. Around noon, as the lunch crowd began to thin, Frank approached her with an unusually serious expression. "There's someone asking for you," he said, nodding toward the entrance. "Looks important. Take 5 if you need to." Sarah turned, expecting perhaps to see Tyler, but instead found herself facing a woman in a tailored charcoal suit, her posture professional, clipboard in hand. "Sarah Matthews?" the woman asked, extending her hand. "My name is Rebecca Stevens. I represent Edward Thornton. Do you have a moment to talk?" Edward Thornton, the well-dressed man from last night. Sarah nodded, confused but curious, and led Rebecca to an empty booth away from her section. "Mr. Thornton was quite impressed by your interaction with the young man yesterday evening," Rebecca began, her voice measured and direct. "He'd like to speak with you personally, if you're available after your shift." Sarah's confusion deepened. "About Tyler? Is he okay?" Rebecca smiled slightly. "The young man is fine, Ms. Matthews. Mr. Thornton's interest is in you. Actually, your compassion made quite an impression on him." "I don't understand," Sarah admitted. "I just gave someone a meal." "Mr. Thornton believes there was more to it than that," Rebecca replied. She slid a business card across the table. "Perhaps he can explain better himself. His driver can pick you up after your shift concludes at 4 p.m. Would that be acceptable?" Sarah hesitated, examining the card. It was heavy, expensive stock with embossed lettering. Edward Thornton, CEO, Thornton Foundations. She'd never heard of the company, but the quality of the card alone spoke of wealth. "I'm not sure," Sarah began. "Mr. Thornton understands your hesitation." Rebecca interjected smoothly. "For your peace of mind, the meeting would take place at his downtown office, which has a full security staff. You're welcome to bring a friend, if that would make you more comfortable. And of course, your time will be compensated." The mention of compensation caught Sarah's attention. Her rent was due in a week, and she was still short $100. Whatever this mysterious meeting was about, it couldn't hurt to hear the man out. "Okay," she agreed finally. "I'll meet with him." Rebecca nodded, clearly satisfied. "Excellent. A car will be waiting outside the diner at 4 p.m. Mr. Thornton appreciates your time, Ms. Matthews." After Rebecca departed, Sarah returned to work, her mind buzzing with questions. Frank raised an eyebrow but didn't press for details, and Sarah was grateful. How could she explain something she didn't understand herself? At precisely 4 p.m., Sarah found a sleek black car idling outside the diner. The driver, a middle-aged man with a kind face, opened the door for her with a polite nod. The leather seats were softer than anything Sarah had felt before, and the interior smelled of pine and polish. 15 minutes later, the car pulled up to one of the tallest buildings in the city's financial district. Sarah followed her escort through a marble lobby, into a private elevator, and finally into a reception area decorated in muted blues and grays. Every surface gleamed, and the quiet efficiency of the staff made Sarah acutely aware of her waitress uniform and scuffed shoes. "Ms. Matthews," Edward Thornton greeted her, emerging from an office. Today, his suit was navy blue, his silver hair perfectly groomed. "Thank you for coming. Please, come in." Edward's office was spacious but not ostentatious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. He gestured for Sarah to take a seat in one of the comfortable chairs positioned near his desk. "I imagine you're wondering why I asked to meet with you," Edward began, settling into his own chair. "The thought crossed my mind," Sarah admitted, trying to keep her voice steady despite her nervousness. Edward smiled. "I observed something rare last night. Genuine compassion, without expectation of reward. You helped that young man not for recognition or compensation, but simply because, as you put it, it was the right thing to do." Sarah shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. "Anyone would have done the same." "That's where you're wrong, Ms. Matthews. Most people wouldn't have. They might have felt sympathy, but they wouldn't have acted. You did." Edward leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Which is why I'd like to offer you a position." Sarah blinked in surprise. "A position? Doing what exactly?" I run a foundation that provides support to underprivileged youth, Edward explained. We offer educational opportunities, housing assistance, mental health services, whatever they need to break the cycle of poverty and build meaningful lives. What we lack, however, are people who can connect with these young people authentically. People like you. Sarah's mind raced. Was this real? I don't have any qualifications, she protested. No degree, no social work experience. You have the most important qualification, Edward interrupted gently. Empathy. Everything else can be learned. I'm offering you the chance to do professionally what you already do instinctively. Help people who need it. Edward slid a folder across the desk. Inside was an employment contract outlining a role as a youth outreach coordinator, with salary that made Sarah's eyes widen, nearly triple what she earned at the diner. This can't be real, she murmured, scanning the document. I assure you it is, Edward replied. And there's one more thing. He passed her another document, this one a lease agreement. Part of our program involves providing stable housing for our staff who work directly with vulnerable youth. The foundation maintains several properties throughout the city, including a recently renovated house in Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge, one of the most desirable neighborhoods in the city, with tree-lined streets and historic homes. Sarah had driven through it once, marveling at the beautiful gardens and restored architecture. You're offering me a job in a house? Sarah asked incredulously. You don't even know me. I know enough, Edward said confidently. I've been in business for 40 years, Ms. Matthews. I've learned to trust my instincts about people, and my instincts about you are very good indeed. Sarah felt lightheaded. This morning, she had woken up worrying about making rent on her tiny apartment. Now this stranger was offering her a new career and a home in one of the best neighborhoods in the city. This seems too good to be true, she said, voicing her suspicion. Edward nodded, understanding his eyes. I anticipated your skepticism. That's why I'd like you to see the house before making any decisions. My driver can take you there now. If you'd like, the property manager will meet you with the keys. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. What did she have to lose by looking? The drive to Oak Ridge took 20 minutes, during which Sarah tried to process the surreal turn her day had taken. The car eventually pulled up to a 2-story colonial with a wide front porch and neatly landscaped yard. It wasn't the largest house on the block, but it was beautifully maintained, with fresh paint and gleaming windows. A middle-aged woman introduced herself as Patricia, the property manager, and led Sarah on a tour. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Hardwood floors, updated kitchen with new appliances, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a small backyard with garden. The furniture was tasteful and comfortable, clearly chosen with care. All the foundation's houses are fully furnished, Patricia explained. We find it helps our team members transition more easily. Sarah ran her fingers along the smooth countertop in the kitchen, trying to imagine herself living in such a place. And the rent? She asked, waiting for the catch. The housing is part of your compensation package, Patricia replied. There's no additional rent. Utilities and maintenance are covered by the foundation. As she continued through the house, Sarah's disbelief gradually gave way to cautious excitement. The second floor contained a master bedroom with an ensuite bathroom, a smaller bedroom currently set up as a home office, and a third room that could serve as a guest room. Standing in the master bedroom, looking out at the peaceful street below, Sarah finally allowed herself to consider that this might actually be happening. Her entire adult life had been a struggle to stay afloat, to keep moving forward despite setbacks and disappointments. Could things really change so dramatically in the span of a day? When she returned to Edward's office an hour later, her mind was made up. She would accept his offer, but she had one condition. Tyler, she said firmly, the boy from the diner, can your foundation help him too? Edward smiled, as if her request confirmed something he had suspected. As a matter of fact, I've already made inquiries. My assistant located Tyler at the shelter you recommended. He's being evaluated for our youth program as we speak. Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Then I accept your offer, Mr. Thornton. Edward, please, he corrected. And I'm delighted to hear it. When can you start? I need to give Frank notice at the diner, Sarah replied. 2 weeks would be fair. Edward nodded approvingly. Your loyalty speaks well of you. 2 weeks it is. In the meantime, Patricia will handle the paperwork for the house. You can move in whenever you're ready." As Sarah signed the employment contract, a sense of wonder washed over her. Just 24 hours ago, she had been an ordinary waitress struggling to make ends meet. Now she was accepting a position that could change not only her life, but the lives of young people like Tyler. Before she left, Sarah had one last question. Why me? There must be thousands of people more qualified. Edward was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "My wife and I never had children," he said finally. "When she passed away 5 years ago, I promised her I would use our fortune to make a difference in the world. But money alone doesn't change lives, Sarah. People do. People who care enough to act when they see someone in need." He looked out at the cityscape, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the buildings. "Yesterday, when I saw you help that boy without hesitation or judgment, I recognized something rare, the very quality that has been missing from my foundation's work. Technical expertise we have in abundance, but heart, that's harder to find." Sarah nodded, understanding dawning. This wasn't charity or random luck. It was recognition of a quality she had never thought particularly special or valuable. As she rode the elevator down to the lobby, Sarah felt as though she was descending into a new life, one with purpose and possibility beyond anything she had imagined for herself. And it had all begun with a simple bowl of soup offered to a hungry stranger. That evening, as she packed her few belongings in her tiny apartment, Sarah found a napkin with her phone number that she had given to Tyler. She smiled, thinking of how differently things might have turned out had she not chosen kindness in that moment. Tomorrow, she would begin training for her new role. Tomorrow, she would start the process of moving into a house that still seemed like something from a dream. Tomorrow, her life would truly begin to change. But tonight, Sarah sat on her worn couch, looked around the apartment that had been her home for the past 3 years, and allowed herself a moment to appreciate the journey that had brought her here, and the unexpected path that now lay before her. The first rays of morning sunlight streamed through the bay windows of Sarah's new bedroom, illuminating dust particles that danced in the golden light. After 3 weeks in the Oak Ridge house, Sarah still woke each morning with a fleeting sense of disorientation. The softness of the queen-size mattress, the gentle whir of the ceiling fan above, the spacious room with its subtle blue walls, all of it remained surreal, a stark contrast to the cramped apartment she had called home for years. Today marked her 3rd week as Youth Outreach Coordinator at Thornton Foundations. The learning curve had been steep, with training sessions on trauma-informed care, adolescent psychology, and the complex bureaucracy of social services. Her days were filled with meetings and paperwork, yes, but also with meaningful connections to young people whose stories resonated deeply with her own experiences of struggle and resilience. Sarah swung her legs over the side of the bed and padded to the window, gazing out at the tree-lined street. The neighborhood had welcomed her with a quiet acceptance that surprised her. No suspicion about her sudden appearance in this affluent enclave, no questions about whether she belonged. Perhaps that was Edward's influence, or perhaps it was simply the dignity afforded by the address itself. As she prepared for work, selecting a blouse and slacks from a wardrobe that had gradually expanded beyond waitress uniforms, Sarah reflected on how quickly external changes could reshape one sense of possibility. The house, the job, the clothes. They were tangible manifestations of opportunity. Yet she knew the true transformation was happening somewhere deeper, in the space where self-perception meets potential. The doorbell chimed as Sarah was finishing her coffee. Opening the front door, she found Tyler standing on her porch, his posture straighter than when she first met him, his eyes clearer. "Ready for the big day?" she asked, smiling warmly. Tyler nodded, adjusting the strap of his new backpack. "As ready as I'll ever be, I guess." Today was Tyler's first day back in school, a private academy that partnered with a foundation to provide education for youth in their programs. Edward had fast-tracked his application, recognizing both his academic potential and his need for stability. "You're going to be amazing," Sarah assured him, stepping outside and locking the door behind her. "And remember, I'm just a phone call away if anything feels overwhelming." They walked together to Sarah's car, another recent addition to her life. Financed through an employee program at the foundation, the drive to the academy was filled with Tyler's nervous questions about his classes, his teachers, whether the other students would accept him. Sarah answered each inquiry with patience, recognizing in his anxiety the universal human desire to belong. The other kids, Tyler said hesitantly as they approached the school's imposing brick entrance. They'll know I'm not like them, that I'm only here because of charity. Sarah parked the car and turned to face him fully. Listen to me. You're not here because of charity. You're here because Edward Thornton and his foundation recognize your potential, just like I did that night at the diner. This isn't a handout. It's an investment in who you can become. Tyler absorbed her words, his expression thoughtful. But what if I fail? What if I can't live up to everyone's expectations? Then you'll learn from it and try again, Sarah replied simply. That's all any of us can do. The only true failure is giving up on yourself. The tension in Tyler's shoulders eased slightly. Will you be here when school lets out? 3:30 sharp, Sarah promised. Now go show them what you're made of. As she watched Tyler walk to the academy's doors, Sarah felt a surge of emotion, pride mixed with a profound sense of responsibility. In the few weeks since their lives had intersected, their relationship had evolved into something neither had anticipated. A bond forged through shared understanding of struggle and the tentative embrace of new beginnings. At the foundation offices, Sarah's day unfolded with its now familiar rhythm of meetings and case reviews. Her colleagues, social workers, therapists, education specialists, had welcomed her perspective, valuing the intuitive understanding she brought to their work with vulnerable youth. What she lacked in formal credentials, she made up for with genuine empathy and first-hand knowledge of the challenges their clients faced. Sarah, do you have a moment? Edward's voice pulled her from a file she was reviewing. A 14-year-old girl recently placed in emergency foster care after fleeing an abusive home. Of course, Sarah replied, following Edward to his office. Once inside, he gestured for her to sit, his expression uncharacteristically serious. I've been observing your work these past weeks, he began. Your integration into the team, your approach with our youth clients, particularly Tyler. Sarah felt a flicker of anxiety. Had she overstepped some boundary? Was her lack of formal training becoming apparent? You've exceeded every expectation, Edward continued, his expression warming. The connection you've established with Tyler, especially, has accelerated his progress in ways our professional staff found remarkable. Relief washed over Sarah. He's an exceptional young man. He just needed someone to see that. Which is precisely why I'd like to propose an expansion of your role, Edward said, sliding a folder across his desk. We've been developing a mentorship program, pairing our youth with supportive adults who can provide consistent guidance beyond what our professional services offer. I'd like you to head this initiative. Sarah opened the folder, scanning the proposal outline within. This would be a significant undertaking, she observed. It would, Edward agreed, and it would come with additional compensation and resources, of course. But more importantly, it would allow you to build something meaningful, a program that reflects your understanding of what these young people truly need. The opportunity before her was extraordinary, a chance to create a system of support that could have changed the trajectory of her own life had it existed when she was struggling. I'd be honored, she said finally. Edward smiled. I had hoped you'd say that. There's one more matter I'd like to discuss. He hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. It concerns Tyler's living situation. Sarah tensed slightly. Tyler had been staying at a transitional housing facility affiliated with the foundation, clean, safe, but institutional in its approach. Is there a problem? Not exactly, Edward replied. But our psychologists believe he would benefit from a more family-like environment, given your connection and the fact that your house has spare rooms. I wondered if you might consider becoming his foster parent. The suggestion caught Sarah completely off guard. Me? But I don't have any experience as a parent. Parenting experience is valuable, certainly, Edward acknowledged. But what Tyler needs most right now is stability and understanding, qualities you possess in abundance. The foundation would provide support, of course, training, resources, counseling for both of you. Sarah stared out the window, her mind racing. The house in Oak Ridge suddenly made more sense. Its multiple bedrooms, its location in a good school district, its family-friendly layout. Had this been Edward's plan all along? I need some time to think about this, she said honestly. It's a big responsibility. Of course, Edward agreed. Take all the time you need. This isn't a decision to be made lightly. Throughout the remainder of her workday, Sarah found her thoughts returning to Edward's proposal. Becoming Tyler's foster parent would fundamentally alter both their lives. Was she ready for such a commitment? Did she have what it would take to provide the stability and guidance he needed? At 3:30, as promised, Sarah waited outside the academy. When Tyler emerged from the building, his expression was lighter than she had seen it since they met. "How was it?" she asked as he climbed into the passenger seat. "Different," Tyler replied, a cautious smile playing at his lips. "Good different, I think. The teachers actually seem to care whether you understand material or not." As they drove, Tyler recounted his day. The advanced math class where he had surprised himself by keeping up, the literature discussion where his perspective had been actively sought, the lunch period where a group of students had invited him to sit with them. "They didn't treat me like an outsider," he said, wonder in his voice. "Even knowing I was new, that I came from a different situation." Sarah heard in his words the beginning of something precious, belief in his own worthiness, his right to occupy spaces previously deemed inaccessible to people like them. "Tyler," she said carefully as they pulled into her driveway, "would you like to come in for a while? I thought we could talk about something." Inside, Sarah prepared hot chocolate, a small luxury she had discovered Tyler enjoyed, and they settled at the kitchen island, the afternoon sun casting warm patterns across the countertop. "I've been offered a chance to expand my role at the foundation," Sarah began, "creating a mentorship program for young people in situations similar to yours." "That's amazing," Tyler said sincerely. "You'd be perfect for that." Sarah smiled at his confidence in her abilities. "There's more. Edward also suggested that I consider becoming your foster parent, that you might come to live here with me." Tyler's mug froze halfway to his lips, his eyes widening. "Like permanently?" "If it worked out for both of us, yes," Sarah replied. "This would be your home, your address. You'd have your own room, stability, support." "Why would you want to do that?" Tyler asked, echoing the same question he had posed in the diner weeks ago. Take on someone else's problems? Sarah considered her answer carefully. "Because I see myself in you, Tyler. The determination, the resilience, the potential. Because I know what it's like to face the world alone, and how much difference one person's belief can make. And because I think maybe we could build something good here, a family of sorts, based not on obligation but on choice." Tears welled in Tyler's eyes, emotions he had kept carefully contained now rising to the surface. "I don't know how to be part of a family anymore," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Neither do I," Sarah confessed. "My mother died when I was 20, and I've been on my own ever since. So maybe we'd be learning together." Tyler looked around the kitchen, then toward the living room beyond, as if trying to imagine himself in this space, belonging here. "Could I think about it?" "Of course," Sarah assured him. "This is your decision, too, Tyler. It has to feel right for both of us." They finished their hot chocolate in comfortable silence, each contemplating the possibility, a shared future neither had anticipated when fate brought them together in a rain-soaked diner. 3 days later, Tyler moved into the second bedroom of Sarah's Oak Ridge house. The transition was not without challenges. Paperwork and legal requirements, adjustments to living together, the complexity of building trust between two people who had known abandonment and hardship. But with each passing week, the house became more truly a home, filled with the markers of shared life. Tyler's textbooks spread across the dining table, his favorite cereals in the pantry, photographs of the two of them displayed on the mantel. 6 months into her role as youth outreach coordinator and foster parent, Sarah stood in Edward's office once again, presenting the framework for the mentorship program she had developed. "We're focusing on authentic connection rather than prescribed outcomes," she explained, pointing to the relevant section of her proposal. "Our mentors are carefully matched with youth based on shared experiences and complementary personalities. The goal isn't to fix these young people, but to walk alongside them as they discover their own strength and potential." Edward nodded approvingly. And the preliminary results? Promising, Sarah replied. We're seeing improved school attendance, decreased anxiety, and more willingness to engage with other support services. Most importantly, the participants report feeling genuinely understood, perhaps for the first time. And Tyler, Edward asked, his expression softening. How is he adjusting? Sarah couldn't suppress her smile. He's thriving. Top marks in science and mathematics, making friends, even talking about college possibilities. There are still difficult days, of course. Trauma doesn't disappear overnight, but he's building resilience, learning to trust again. And you? Edward inquired gently. How has this transformation affected you? Sarah considered the question, reflecting on the extraordinary journey from waitress to program director, from solitary struggle to meaningful connection. I've discovered purpose, she said finally. Not just in the work, though that's deeply fulfilling, but in the recognition that my own experiences have value, that the challenges I face have equipped me to understand and support others facing similar obstacles. That, Edward said with satisfaction, is precisely why I approached you that day at the diner. Not because you needed saving, but because you possess something rare and essential, the capacity to transform your own pain into compassion for others. As Sarah drove home that evening, the setting sun gilding the city in golden light, she reflected on the remarkable chain of events that had brought her to this moment. A single act of kindness, a free meal for a hungry teenager, had set in motion changes she could never have imagined. Pulling into her driveway, she saw Tyler through the living room window, absorbed in homework at the dining table. The sight filled her with quiet joy and fierce protectiveness. This was her family now. Unconventional, perhaps, but no less real for having been chosen rather than born into. Inside, warmth and the aroma of the pasta Tyler had started for dinner greeted her. How was your presentation? He asked, looking up from his textbook. Edward approved the full program, Sarah replied, setting down her bag. We'll start recruiting mentors next month. Tyler's face lit up with genuine pleasure at her success. I knew he would. Your ideas are good. Sarah, they'll help people. Like you helped me. In that moment, standing in a home that had once seemed an impossible dream, Sarah understood the true nature of transformation. It wasn't about moving from a small apartment to a beautiful house, or from struggling to make rent to financial security. It wasn't even about professional accomplishment or recognition. True transformation lay in connections forged through compassion, in recognizing another's humanity and responding with kindness, in choosing, day after day, to build something meaningful from the raw materials of shared experience and mutual respect. We helped each other, Sarah corrected gently, resting her hand briefly on Tyler's shoulder before moving to finish preparing dinner. And together, we'll help others find their way too. Outside, twilight descended on a quiet street, wrapping the house in soft darkness punctuated by windows glowing with warm light. Beacons of possibility in a world where kindness, offered freely, could still transform lives in ways both profound and unexpected. The journey from a rain-soaked diner to this moment had been unpredictable, challenging, and ultimately beautiful. Proof that even in our most difficult hours, a single compassionate gesture can ripple outward, creating change beyond our wildest imaginings. Next time you see someone in need, remember Sarah and Tyler's story. Your kindness might just be the turning point in someone's life journey. What small act of compassion will you offer today?